Howdy, all you delicious people. The Masked Singer, Season 4, Episode 8. Why does this almost sound like Captain Picard or Captain Kirk? I don't know. But let's go into this. So, reasonably, I felt like the performances were kind of felt safe to me. With the exclusion, maybe like Seahorse. Seahorse was really fun. But everybody else was kind of like, I think everyone was kind of safe because reasonably, when looking at it, stretching the songs because reasonably it's just like, yeah, well, we're kind of not performing like every single week. We're just kind of performing every other. So it's kind of like you can have like a better choice of music. Because I'm sure in the earlier on seasons, I'm sure a lot of people like, God, I had to pick through so many songs. Oh my God, was I exhausted? Like for this one, they're kind of like they're stretching the seasons, I guess, out a little bit more. So reasonably, it's like if there's some like mass singers that do have certain likings of music, they can probably figure out really well in time how to perform all of these. But again, I don't know. I'm not a mass singer person. I've heard some interviews. I've heard Chris Daughtry talk about how like, dude, you can't you can't see. You can't see. You're gonna smack into somebody. You're gonna fall off the stage. Uh, somebody's gonna mess up. It's gonna happen. So when going into this, let's talk about the people that I picked because most of it might be review or some things may be new. So we are probably maybe going to be eating some crow in this episode, or we are going to be like, yeah, why did I pick any of this stuff? Why did I, like, this is an episode of, like, how does this person know this? Because here we go. So, the crocodile. I have emphatically mentioned this man here, Nick Carter, as the crocodile. And in this episode, it seemed like there was a softballish, like, toss-up to me, which I appreciate. Because, believe me, I do. So, Nick Carter. What do I know about this person? So, in the clue package, the crocodile and his seemingly person with record on face had mentioned that this person was in the music business. Had flown all over the world and won every thing that he could do through music. Because if you guys remember a little show called TRL, man, like women were just, it happens. Believe me, it does. Whenever you've seen TRL and those guys. Lockdowns and things were happening even before lockdowns were a thing with those guys. Believe me. So, Nick Carter, music man of sorts. And so recently I was like, okay, well, maybe I'm in softballing this up. And so reasonably, I was like, you know what? Like, this performance isn't like, it sadly was not something I could easily remember the song reasonably. Sadly, I'm sorry, Nick. I'm sorry. I appreciate your music. I like your stuff. So, we ultimately have Nick bring out a B. Ultimately, I think the judges were thinking too far into the whole B thing. If they would have probably brung out 3 Bs, then ultimately somebody would have been like, I know. I get it. Step by step, day by day, step by step. So why do they keep throwing in New Kids on the Block songs with this person? I wonder. Again, New Year's performance. The Backstreet Boys had done a thing with New Kids on the Block. So, reasonably, if you want to go with a boy band group, you're going with the wrong one. You're thinking it's New Kids on the Block. It's not. Believe me. So the B came out, and ultimately the clue was that this character was in. He was in a cult classic movie. You couldn't have said Christmas cult classic movie because technically it is a Christmas cult classic movie, but that would narrow down this a little bit too much. It probably would, wouldn't it, Nick Carter? So going into this, the cult classic movie that Nick Carter could be tied into, softball tossing it up, would be Edward Scissorhands, because recently Nick Carter, I believe, was an extra or had a really small part in that movie. Luckily enough, IMDb is a good friend to me at some points in time, especially when researching this person. Luckily for me. So, we have 4 people in this episode, and 2 are going home. Ultimately, I'm going to tell you right now who mascotted names have are going to be going home in this episode, so you can come up quickly with who you think those 2 people are, because reasonably the crocodile is safe, or was safe. If ultimately you don't want to know who the 2 other mascotted people were, then by golly, go on to Hulu and rewatch this entire episode, or you can go through YouTube and go through The Masked Singer and watching the reveals or any of that stuff. Watch all of it. Watch everything. Watch it all. So, the crocodile. So, The Masked Singer. We also have a character called Seahorse. So let's show you who I think that is right now. The Seahorse. I think I have much more narrowed down now that it is Ariana Grande. So we have a carpool episode of Ariana Grande. I don't know how I freaking know this, because I spammed a lot of carpool karaoke things with Jim Corrigan, and I had seen this thing where Ariana Grande was talking about stuff, music, this and that, talking about how she loved Celine Dion, and I think maybe Britney Spears. So now that Ariana Grande, quite possibly, as a seahorse, was singing a Britney Spears song, immediately I was like, one, this song is fun. I liked this in this episode, and it's a very memorable, funny thing to do, and I thought that was fun. So, Ariana Grande, I didn't know much about the clue packages. I didn't know how to tie any of that into there. But here's the theory that I had. If only we had a Big Bang to showcase right now as the theory of which I had of who was strolling in. So, the seahorse had walked in the astronaut, which, if you guys remember, in another season, the astronaut was none other than Hunter Hayes. So there's going to be some spoilers to other seasons in this episode, and I apologize. But Hunter Hayes was the astronaut in another season. So, how can we connect the seahorse, who could quite possibly be Ariana Grande, with Hunter Hayes? So, very hard to Google, but if you just if you throw into the Google Ariana Grande and Hunter Hayes, you'll get a song that they did for the Big Bang Theory. So I'm like, well, I Googled that. That was my lifeline that I threw out of this episode. And so reasonably, that was the thing where I was like, okay, I think I can cement now that it's Ariana Grande, who is the seahorse. Ultimately, Ariana had been guest at some point of being on this show, and so hopefully, this is correct, or otherwise I'm going to be walking around with egg on my face. So, Ultimately, we have the whatchamacallit and the serpent who had gone home, unmasked. And I will tell you who those people were by the end of this episode via unmasking them. So, let's move on to who the whatchamacallits and serpents were. Moving on. The serpent. So, I had emphatically, every single time the serpent had come up, mentioned Leslie Odom Jr. Here's the thing, though. Something that Nicole said was bugging me through this episode. Something was, not quite sitting that well for me while watching this episode. And after this episode had ended, was just like, you know what? There's something that I know, or there's something that I'm familiar with, and I need to check something out afterwards to justify maybe having this guess. So, in this episode, we had the serpent who, of course, again, is putting on a pretty decent performance. So, reasonably, we have, in the clue package, there's consistent doctor references, and I never quite could connect to that. And I was very confused. So, we have it to where after the serpent sang, we have Ice Cream walking out. Ice Cream, who, of course, if you don't know, was Ninja, and Ninja is a YouTuber, and I was just like, oh my god. At that point, I was like, no. I was like, wait a minute. YouTubers? Oh my god, this is gonna take a while. This is gonna be difficult. And but here's the thing. Nicole was mentioning Dr. Elvis Francois, or she was mentioning this person, and I was like, you know what? There's something where this sticks out to me, and I don't know why right now, but I will find out. I will figure out. I will figure out if I'm right about this after this episode was to end. So, these are my guesses for the serpent. At the end of this episode, we'll figure out if I was wrong. Because more than likely, if you saw the episode, you'll know. So, let's go on to whatchamacallit. So, whatchamacallit, I had naturally assumed that this was Jake Norman, or no, Josh Norman from the Carolina or North Carolina Panthers. Reference to Panthers, stuff like that. Dancing with the Stars. So, yes, Josh Norman. I was stumbling upon the name, and because ultimately that frequently happens for everything. Nicole, usually I tend to sadly forget her name a lot because there's so many judges, and plus also like there's just you're always gonna forget something. So Josh Norman, I had assumed Dancing with the Stars. I kept going with its answer because I was assuming it was an athlete, but I don't know enough about sports to have justified any real answer. But I was kind of just clutching. I was hoping. And so now that I've said all the clues that I said in previous episodes, this is the only guess that I had for whatchamacallit, because I couldn't figure out anybody else. So now when going into these surprising like approaches of who these people were, I am going to reveal who these people were at right now. So if you don't want to get spoiled who either one of these people were, Double Five right now. You can go and watch the episodes. You can see the reveals and stuff like that. So now, I'm going to tell you who the Serpent and whatchamacallit were. Ultimately, I'm not going to do them in any certain kind of order. So if you're expecting some Masked Singer to show up first and they won't, so if you didn't watch the entire episode, do so. Then come back. So, let's reveal right now. Dr. Elvis Francois, orthopedic surgeon, musician, and viral sensation. Here's how I know this. So, Elvis Francois, if that's how to pronounce his name, I apologize if I'm impronouncing it. So, this doctor, I was like, okay, how do I know this? Because I used to be like watching the consistent CV coverage, and at some points in time, this person would be on the news. Like I would watch CNN like consistently while CV was going on, and I would also had seen this person on YouTube, on a YouTube channel called Some Good News with John Krasinski. And I was like, yeah, that is where I saw this person. And I can remember seeing this person was on Some Good News with John Krasinski. I think I made a horrible mention to like say like that was this doctor trying to like pivot and try to do like other things, which justifiably I didn't realize how like really bad really bad things were getting until the longer they were getting. And then I was like, yeah, if you're gonna pivot, try to do anything you can, buddy. Try to do anything. It's okay. But when looking at this, yeah, I had seen this guy on John Krasinski doing the like you could almost like if you didn't watch the news or you didn't watch Some Good News with John Krasinski, you kind of missed this because I was like, God, how do I know this person? He looks so familiar, especially when they finally unmasked him at the very end of this. Is like Some Good News. Like immediately, that's what popped into my head because I'm like that doctor thing sounds very reasonable, and why does Nicole seem to be going like at bat twice for this? But then I was like, oh yeah, a viral sensation and reasonably like I think if anything, like this guy was a great pick to be on here justifiably. And because ultimately, like, people were just like in awe of him through like him being a doctor and him singing. Like, to me, like, when I would see the videos, I'm like, is the guy in the mall somewhere? Like, I think that was the joke that I had. I'm like, is this guy in the mall somewhere, or is he actually like in some hospital? I was unsure because recently I couldn't tell because all you could see is one guy on a piano, and you could see Dr. Elvis him singing with his scrubs on. I think the Imagine one was a big the song that he did that Ken mentions, like, that was a big one. Like, that everybody would be showing that everywhere. Like, that got everywhere. And then basically, like, every once in a while, I think he would go and do some kind of show somewhere and do like some song for them. And so I think that like that's what got the ball rolling even more for this person. So good for him. Good for him for being on the show. Like that was just like, oh yeah, like I'm familiar, because ultimately the visual of his face was like, how do I know this person's face? So last and not least, we are gonna unmask the whatchamacallit right now. Lonzo Ball. First off, I want to say that I apologize. For one, we ultimately have Lorenzo, who had also done a song called Lean Back, which I believe was done by Fat Joe. Which ultimately, I was familiar with this song, Lean Back. It's a great song. It was really, it was actually pretty, like, a fun performance. Like, recently you got, like, the entire judges, they were all, like, doing they were all having fun with it. And I think that was like, if anything, for Lorenzo Ball, it's like, or Lorenzo, Lonzo Ball, I'm sorry. Lonzo Ball, because I'm sorry. So Lonzo Ball, Lean Back by Fat Joe. This is a great song. Man, this guy, like, great. I was like, when seeing that this was a basketball player, even though it like says that he was a rapper, an entrepreneur, like, man, this guy had like some really interesting choices. Every song was really complicated, and that's where I was probably assuming that this was an actual like this person has to be a like musician. And even though I was trying to go the athlete route. So, Lonzo Ball, I don't know much about New Orleans basketball, if not basketball seemingly at all. Ken Jeong knew, because Ken Jeong knows every single thing, I think, about basketball. And so recently, if there is ever a time where there is some masked person that is a basketball-like athlete, Ken will know about them and just easily pick them out. More than likely, maybe this guess was probably in some maybe Google search somewhere. I don't know. I didn't go out of my way to look for this one. Look for the guess of this one. I just went with my guess, and that's what I stuck with. So, Lonzo Ball, I want to make sure I pronounce that right because I impronounced it. Yeah, this one was wrong on my part, and ultimately I am fine with it because when looking at it, like, at least I was familiar with the song that he did lean back. I was familiar with Fat Joe. So, I guess we get, if anything, we could probably get all of these wrong, and it's completely fine. It's completely fine if ultimately people say, dude, there's no way you could have figured out Dr. Elvis. There's no way. Fine. Call it a loss. I'm okay with it. It's completely and utterly okay. So, let's go into a seasonal recap now if you don't want to see ultimately who had gotten revealed through other previous episodes. Now is your time to go, but now let's go into a seasonal recap. So ultimately, if you guys did not know in the very last episode, Clint Black and Lisa Hartman Black had gotten revealed as the Snow Owls. So that was probably, yes, it was a win in my book, but also when looking at it, there's also some times where Google can be your best friend. Again, when Ariana Grande, same instance. It's okay to Google things every once in a while, but there's always has to be a justifiable reason for things. And I think that's where, if anything else, where I come in. So, I think reasonably, like, things are still in pretty good shape, even if we had 2 losses. Because reasonably, with the exclusion of the baby alien and the giraffe, pretty much, even if you take out Squiggly Monster, I think we're still in pretty good shape. So, let's go into reasonably saying that the season is still looking pretty good. There are some costume characters, especially in this group down here, that I'm still just like, yeah, this sucks. I'm confused. I don't know how I'm going to get through any of this. I don't know how it's going to work out. Because I think next week will probably be, I would assume, Group C. Because A, B, now we're going back to C. And we are going to... I'm wondering if there's going to be a double elimination on Group C, or if it's just going to be one person eliminated. It should probably be one person, right? Because, yeah, hopefully that one person that gets unmasked, I get that correct. Hopefully it's not the mushroom or the jellyfish, because I don't think I'm going to get that right. I won't. If it was a double elimination, I definitely won't get them right. Because I won't. Because I already know I'm going to get things incorrect. If you guys have guesses for Group C, let me know in the comments below. Because I don't know really who these people are. So, by and large, go out of your way to comment. Because I don't think I'm going to get this one right next week in The Masked Singer. Ultimately, the Dr. Elvis, Francois, who had, luckily if I wouldn't have not watched the news consistently, or if I wouldn't have watched John Krasinski's Some Good News, that was a stretcher. That was stretching. That was me really just going, like, you know what? There's something that Nicole... Because I trust Nicole a lot of times. And, like, I'm not going with every guessing of judge things. Even though there's sometimes where, like, Ken was right in this episode. And I'm like, I don't think so, Ken. But again... if Ken ever, and I mean ever, picks a basketball player as a Masked Singer person, go with him on that guess. If it's ever anybody else, then reasonably just say, like, well, What's going on, Ken? But this time around, Ken, mwah, you were right. Good for you. Good for you, Ken. If anything, yeah, it's a lot of the times they will tell you a lot of these guesses are lucks of the draw. Because reasonably, I think the very first impression guess is really going to weigh on a lot of these judges. And reasonably, they're going to backpedal and they're going to try to just like go like, well, I should go with my first guess, even though I don't, because those first guesses will matter. For them to get the good old I don't know which judge is up right now for like winning this whole thing. I would have naturally assumed it would have been Robin Thicke because Robin Thicke usually guesses pretty well, but it doesn't seem like that in this season. Seems like it's either I think it's probably Nicole or it's probably Wahlberg. I think they're probably like pretty close, right, in this season for first guesses because I think Ken and Robin Thicke. Like, I think if you would have done this earlier seasons, he would have right on the money. But like, I think now it's just like, what happened, Robin? What happened, Robin? Hopefully, you get some good guesses there, buddy. But I think recently he had gotten Bob Saget correct. That was his. I think that was a good guess on him. So yeah. So Robin Thicke. Hopefully this works out for you, buddy. But I'm gonna get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.